This is what I experienced minutes after setting foot in my family's hometown.
We literally just got here. We went through the first military checkpoints and a bunch of soldiers stopped us, started yelling at us.
I'm in the old city of Hebron in the occupied West Bank, a place that once bustled with life. But I'm about to see what Israel's occupation and settlers have done to the heart of this city and to the people who live here. I'm a Palestinian-American journalist, and I've spent much of my career reporting on the occupied territories. But Hebron, one of the West Bank's largest cities, is also my roots. My father was born and raised here. I've returned to learn how the occupation has decimated his beloved hometown, a place he hasn't been back to in years.
I had a mixed feeling, nostalgia with anger, despair over despair. What can I say?
I know it's really hard for him to see this, and so it's emotional for me.
So we're officially on our way to Hebron. My team and I are going to Hebron's Old City, which is ground zero of Israeli apartheid. Today, 33,000 Palestinians live in this part of Hebron, which is under full Israeli military control and fragmented by checkpoints, military outposts, and around 1,000 Israeli settlers who live here in violation of international law.
اللي حصل في البلدة القديمة في مدينة الخليل هي كارثة بندفع ثمنها كل يوم.
حياتكم هون صعبة؟
هي صعبة ومستحيل وحدة تقعد محل تجرب تقعد أسبوع.
إحنا عايشين هون بس باعتبار السجن.
But before we get into all of that, let me back up. It wasn't always like this. This is my dad. He was born in Hebron in 1947. He lived up the hill from the old city where his father and uncle owned a quarry. The year after my dad was born, Israel was established in what Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, or catastrophe. That's because hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were expelled from their homes to clear the way for the creation of a Jewish state. But the West Bank, including Hebron, fell under the control of Jordan. My dad was 19 in June of 1967 when Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights and began a military occupation that still has no end in sight. My dad was in college in Jordan at that time, so he wasn't in Hebron to witness that or to see how Jewish settlers took over parts of the old city. A few years later, he moved to the U.S. for graduate school. I was born and raised in San Francisco and grew up hearing my dad reminisce about his childhood, like how he raised chickens and rabbits on the hill as he watched the vibrant city below. When my family would travel to Palestine in the summers, my dad couldn't come because of work. Now, even though he's retired, he says he doesn't want to return because he refuses to be humiliated by Israeli soldiers. He's only been back to Hebron 3 times. But I'm returning to see with my own eyes what has become of this city that made my father and me who we are today. And that all begins with me actually getting there. It's only about 20 miles from Ramallah where we're starting out, but we can't, as Palestinians, access parts of the main north-south highway because that's reserved exclusively for cars with Israeli license plates. So here's another checkpoint. Instead, we have to take narrower roads and cross through several Israeli military checkpoints. There's another checkpoint. That means it takes much, much longer to get there.
We're finally in Hebron. I'm sure my dad knows these streets inside and out, and he used to walk all over here as a child, so this is literally retracing his footsteps, but it's very different now than when he grew up.
Today, many parts of the city are off limits to Palestinians.
All right, gonna go through.
Because I'm Palestinian, I'm not allowed to enter parts of the old city. So I'm meeting former Israeli soldiers who, I hope, will help me access my family's hometown.
Hi, how are you, Ori? Nice to meet you, I'm Dina.
Ori and Joel are with the Israeli anti-occupation group Breaking the Silence. They used to serve in the Israeli army, but now they give tours of Hebron to expose the reality of how Israel treats Palestinians.
Come here.
But before they could even start showing me around, this happened.
היא אזרחית ארצות הברית ועיתונאית, כן? רק שתדעו. היא אזרחית ארצות הברית ועיתונאית.
אין שום בעיה, הוא צילם עמדה ביטחונית, הוא צריך למחוק את הסרטונים האלה.
אני לא צילמתי את העמדה, צילמתי רק אותך.
לא, צילמת את עמדה. זה לא משנה, אם היא עמדה ליד העמדה,
דבר ראשון, אתה מפריע לנו בעבודה, ואתה עומד שם עם מצלמה. דבר ראשון.
עכשיו דוחף אותי.
יופי, דוחף אותו, כרגע הוא מפריע לי בעבודה.
My Palestinian film crew, who have the proper credentials, are sadly used to experiencing this kind of nationalistic harassment and taunting.
So I've been in the old city for about 5 minutes and we were already stopped by... We literally just got here and a bunch of soldiers stopped us, started yelling at us, started harassing my cameraman. They just asked to see our IDs. I showed my US passport. To all of a sudden have like 6 or 7 armed Israeli soldiers just swarm you. It's honestly really upsetting that this is how you get welcome to your own home city.
The former soldiers I'm spending the day with say this is a typical scene.
When you consider the fact that they grew up in Israeli society, they have education and media and the political system, all of those elements are telling them that Arabs are scary, Palestinians are bad. And then they get an opportunity when they're in the army, they have power in their hands, and it's not surprising that they use it.
Finally, the soldiers give us back our IDs.
Let's continue, right? It's a very classic demonstration of one of the elements of the occupation, which is complete arbitrariness, right? And every soldier in the occupied territories has the authority on his own decision to detain anyone for 3 hours. Yeah? So we were not delayed here for 3 hours, and we are going to continue our tour, obviously, but it's an example.
But what a way to start the day.
I'm about to learn that what I just experienced is nothing compared to what the Palestinians who live here go through every day. This is Fadl, who has lived in this home his whole life. In the 1980s, Israel set up this checkpoint in front of his house. Fadl now has to check in every time he leaves or enters his own home.
كيف بتضايقوا عليكم؟
زي ما انت شايفه بخلوش قرايبنا يجوا علينا.
حترى
يعني بنتي متجوزه هي مسموح لها تيجي جوزها لا.
واو. وهلا لما بتمرق ايش لازم تفرجيه؟
اسمه ورقم هويتي.
وانت بتقدر تمشي
لا.
هون مش ممنوع؟
بس لحديتي.
واو.
هون ممنوع.
Fadl isn't alone. Thousands of other Palestinians in Hebron are also forced to pass military checkpoints just to go home. The military also bans Palestinians from using certain streets, as Ori shows me.
On that street over there, Palestinians are allowed to walk and open businesses, but not allowed to drive. The yellow street on the map is a street where Palestinians are only allowed to walk, not allowed to drive, and not allowed to open businesses. The streets that we're heading towards are mostly sterile, meaning that no Palestinian in the whole wide world can walk on those streets. If you do one step over here, no Palestinians are allowed here. If we take one step here, here Palestinians are allowed. And I don't know any other word to call this than apartheid.
All these restrictions help Israel maintain its hold on Hebron, but they're also in place to protect Israeli settlers, and the ones in Hebron are known for being among the most violent in all of the occupied West Bank.
Our order in Hebron is protect the Jewish settlers, right? We don't have an order protect Palestinians if settlers harass them.
The soldiers never protect the Palestinians.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not in our order.
This is kind of a common sight here in the old city. There's a Palestinian family that lives at the end of this alleyway. Above them is an Israeli settlement, and because the settlers throw garbage down at them, they have to put these nets here to protect them.
يعني هون لما اجى اعتقلوني هون بالضبط اعتقلوني.
كنتي هون بالضبط؟
كنت بالضبط هون. لما اجى اعتقلوني بالضبط هون كنت.
The family at the end of the alley is the Sidrs. Just a few weeks before I arrived to Hebron, nearby settlers accused their 13-year-old daughter Selwa of picking a knife up off the ground.
فقد كل جيبتي معيش ولا سكينة أنا.
אבל שלא מלס. הכל זה אני עכשיו בקלפי. איתי אצלי. יאללה, תעבר זיכון, ממנוע.
اعتقلوني واخذوني على مدرسة أسامة وقعدوا يحاولوا معي.
This is what I experienced minutes after setting foot in my family's hometown.
We literally just got here. We went through the first military checkpoint and a bunch of soldiers stopped us, started yelling at us.
I'm in the old city of Hebron in the occupied West Bank, a place that once bustled with life. But I'm about to see what Israel's occupation and settlers have done to the heart of this city and to the people who live here. I'm a Palestinian-American journalist, and I've spent much of my career reporting on the occupied territories. But Hebron, one of the West Bank's largest cities, is also my roots. My father was born and raised here. I've returned to learn how the occupation has decimated his beloved hometown, a place he hasn't been back to in years.
I had a mixed feeling, nostalgia with anger, despair over despair. What can I say?
I know it's really hard for him to see